Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Travel Coach Network podcast. It is I, Sahar Rose Devor, the founder and CEO of the Travel Coach Network and the creator and instructor of the Travel Coach Certification Program. Today, we have a very special guest. We have Shebs. Shebs is a broadcaster, writer, and podcaster. He is a member of the British Guild of Travel Writers, currently co-executive producer of the PBS show FlyBrother with Ernest White II. He's hosted a breakfast show called Rise and Shine on the only dedicated travel radio station in Africa, Gallivant Radio. Shebs also hosts a travel podcast called Take a Wander with Shebs, which can be seen on his YouTube channel and heard on all major podcasting platforms. Shebs is also the founder, editor, and commercial officer for Voyagers Voice. Shebs, thanks so much for joining us on the TCN podcast today.
Sahar, thank you very much for having me on. I really appreciate your time.
Wonderful. Well, there's so much that I have to ask you, but first, let's get started with tell us where did your passion for travel stem from?
Oh, well, my passion for travel originated from very early on, actually, when my parents first took me to Asia. And my family background is from Bangladesh. So we spent around about 2 months over there when I was, so 1994. So it's going back 30 years ago now. So, and I got my curiosity from there, really. And it was the curiosity as in what it was like to travel away from the UK, where I was born and raised, and just seeing a different cultural side. And that's what really fascinated me from a very young age on what it was like to travel and get away from your norm. And that's where my first love for travel came. And I was curious as time went on. And I was actually talking to a friend earlier on, actually today, about when I was growing up as well. We used to move around different places. We weren't settled as a family, and you can kind of guess, well, you kind of say that I was traveling or at that time as well, going from place to place to place. So I was never really settled, and that's where my first love for travel really came. So my first visit to Asia, really, back in, well, 30 years ago now, and here we are now. I've been traveling around the world. I've been to every corner of the world and experienced life to the fullest, really.
Would you say, I know you've traveled quite a bit, obviously, would you say that there's a trip or an experience that you remember that really made a big impact on you or maybe transformed you in some way?
Yeah, there's many I could go with. There's tons I could choose, obviously traveling all around the world, but the one that really sticks out in my mind every single time when anyone asks me this question is my trip to Cambodia back in 2015. And I've been traveling by then for around about 10 years-ish. Well, I say 10 years. Obviously traveled when I was young with my family, but I say when I first traveled on my own, that's so 10 years in. And it really opened my eyes because I when you travel when you're young, when you're in your 20s, late teens, early 20s, and you're going towards your late 20s at that time, you travel, you're seeing things. I was always into history. I was always into the places that I always wanted to know what made a country the way it was, but it was more to do with their history that really got me. And what really got me was actually how everyone was so because of the history. If people don't know there was a big genocide in the country, but and it was recent as well. That officially it ended in 1997. And when I went, the history was still relatively still new, and people had gone through the trauma. But I met people, and they were so happy, and I couldn't understand this. They've gone through such trauma, but they live in life like it's a second lease. And I took away from that as in I used to get stressed quite a lot with work, anything really, overthink, overanalyze. And I'm thinking here, well, here's people here and they've gone through all of this and there's no stress in life, that they're just happy. They are the kindest people that you could ever meet. And that really opened my eyes to what life I could live going forward. And ever since then, I would say my life has transformed. That was a very transformative experience. And you get people who will always say, well, they've gone on these trips and they're going on a missions trip and they're going for a month or two and it's changed them. But 10 years in, it took me before I really understood what travel was about. And that was my transformative moment back in 2015 when I went to Cambodia.
Yeah, it's really interesting to be able to see how other people live, and oftentimes they have very little, or they have nothing at all, but yet they are the most joyful people and giving and caring and welcoming people. But yet it really puts things into perspective of what's important in our lives and what isn't, doesn't it? Well, I
100%.
found you when I came across an episode of your own podcast titled The Why for Travel. And I want to ask you, after you've experienced, that trip, let's say it was transformative in Cambodia, what would you say your why for travel is on a deeper, more personal level?
Going forward, anytime whenever I travel, not work is very different because I do a lot of trips for work. There's a lot of press trips I do, and there's a reason why I would do those trips. For example, I've got loads coming up. One to Uzbekistan coming up in November, which I'm looking forward to. But those are I've been set a task, so I'm going as a journalist to cover a story. But when I travel for myself, there has to be an urge. And my urge is always to find out what it's like to be a local in that village or in that town and how they live life. And that's more interesting to me than going out and eating in a restaurant, like a five-star restaurant, or staying in a five-star resort with a pool or whatever. That's not why I would travel personally. I really want to get in amongst the people and what I want to gain from it is if it's gonna, as I said, the Cambodia trip, if I can take something from an inspiration, for example, and whether that inspiration will hopefully change me for the better, and that's what I look for when I travel. And I go on urges as well. So if I feel for a place, and also, by the way, I don't do much research before I go. I like to do my research when I get there. Obviously, you sort of overlook a few things here and there, but I try to go to a place and just experience it and then learn whilst I'm there. And if I can get something from the individual, it could be anyone. It could be someone in a coffee shop. It could be someone making dinner for me. If I can take something from them and I can take it away when I go back home or onto my next travel, that is more meaningful to me. And that's what I look for when I travel on when I go for my own trips. It's just to experience that culture because there's nothing like it. Honestly, that you can live in your bubble within the US or the UK or anywhere in Europe and miss all of this. And this is part of why I love to travel. And this is my why, I would say.
Yeah, I love that. That's exactly how I travel. I am not a planner by any means. I like to what I used to do is I would print out a map from the computer of a region of the world, a continent, let's
Hmm.
say, and I would just take that and then I'd say, where do I want to go tomorrow? What's nearby? Let's go there. So it's like throwing a dart at a globe and seeing where it sticks, and that's where I would go. And then I would go and just like you said, experience it, figure it out. You just go off of what you feel. Every
Oh,
place is going to
100%.
make us feel different. We're going to be inspired in a different way to do different things versus sticking to a strict itinerary with everything. So I
Well,
love that you said
well,
that.
when I first started traveling 20 years ago or so, there was no internet, there was nothing like that, no social media. I remember not taking my phone because I thought, well, why do I need to take my phone? I can't use it when I'm out there because there was no such thing as the smartphones that we have these days, and it all had to be done. So you had to pre-plan everything. But it was easier because you could just go to a place and just go off what you feel, and exactly what you just said there. And then that way you can find a way, you can find yourself. And but obviously travel has changed over time. And by the way, the technology has vastly improved our travel. That has obviously changed for the better, I think. It keeps you safe, I suppose, as well. But it was one of those things. I think the way technology has moved on, yes, it's for the better, but the old school way is also not a bad way of doing things, where you don't necessarily have the internet to do your research. You would have had to have gone and bought a book, which I never used to do, by the way. I used to maybe guide over a couple of things here and there before I went, but that's how I think travel should be. And the old school way is not a bad way of traveling.
Yeah, I remember I used to travel with the paper map and a flip phone that didn't even turn on for service to tell me what time it was. And I would find the Lonely Planet books in hostels, and I would take a look at that. And even at that time, they were starting to get outdated by the hostels that were in the back of them. But it
Mm-hmm.
made me think, I wonder how, because we have a certain perspective of traveling because of how we had to travel. We had to figure it out. We had to just go off the whim of showing up in a place and knocking on doors and hoping they had a room for us to stay in or a bed to sleep in. And kind of figuring it out that way. But nowadays, like you said, there's so many tools, resources, apps, technology that, yes, makes travel very easy and convenient and quick and seamless. But does that change the current traveler? They never had to use a paper map and
Mm-hmm.
show up in a destination and figure things out. Do you think that would impact their overall experience and their own why for travel these days?
I think so, yeah. If there wasn't the way people travel now, as we've just explained there, technology is a big factor, and it is for the better. Don't get me wrong, it's not, and it's safety is a big thing as well, by the way. So you can keep it, you can navigate to places now with there's loads of different apps now to do so, but maybe it takes away something from that initial experience. And I see a lot of kids who come, we're going to talk about business in a second, but there's a lot of kids who ask me questions about how to make it in this industry within the travel industry and how to become a journalist and stuff. And I always say, and one student actually came to me because I do a few talks in schools and universities. One student who reached out to me, and the advice I gave them was just go out there, travel, and just don't do it. Don't plan it all, because you probably learn more about yourself. And those are the best experiences, by the way, because if you have everything planned to the T, it's not going to be authentic, and you want an authentic experience. And if you have everything all carved out on a map, then you're not going to get that authentic experience. Sorry, because you can go off urges then, because you can find something and you think, well, I'm going to stay there slightly longer. And thankfully, actually, the student came back to me and said, I've taken your advice. I've done exactly what you're doing, and she's going to report to me when she comes back and see how it went for her.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice. Yeah, I think it's very true. Because when we don't have all the resources and the ease that we have today, we had to get outside of our comfort zone. We had
Hmm.
to face some fears. We had to communicate more. We had to try to connect with the locals where we don't really speak the language, and they would help us, right?
Hmm.
So it forced us into situations where that enabled us to really experience humanity in a different way, to really learn more about ourselves, to we talk about all the time how travel builds our personal growth and professional development and our cognition, our mental well-being. But if all of those challenges and problem solving and experiences were removed, how much more room is there, or how many opportunities
Mm.
are there for growth, right? Um,
100%.
it's just something that came to mind. But let's get more into what you do, and you have built quite an expansive travel brand, whether it's through journalism, your the side of production, your podcast. Can you share more about some of those early steps that you took and what kind of advice you would give for those who are like, I have this passion for travel, want to do something with it. I don't really know what direction to go in or how do I build this?
Well, I'll take it back from when I first school time or at university. My degree was in media and arts, and I did my photography, videography, video editing was all that was a passion, and I always wanted to go down that route. I've always been curious about the that medium, and I'm a big movie lover as well. I've always wanted to make my own movie as well, potentially documentaries, all that sort of things. Even my university, my last year or college, as you guys say in the US, I did like a final. My final involved hiring an actor and doing like a big, well, it was like a not necessarily a like a situational sort of a show that I did or recorded, and so I was always into that. However, I knew once I left, it was going to be tough getting into the field because it's the anything creative, anything artistic, anything, it's always going to be tough to break into. So what did I have to do? You just had to literally, well, actually, so going back now, we were talking about technology. Perhaps technology was my forte because as time went on, going back, you would have to go into offices or you'd have to knock on people's door or meet someone, network, which is I was fine with all of that sort of stuff. But what my breakthrough really came through the initial pandemic stages where I suppose the proliferation of technology because of the fact that everyone was working remotely, etc. And I got noticed by a producer and said that we like the way you discuss stuff on your platforms. Would you be interested in doing a show, a radio show? And I was like, whoa, I've not got no broadcasting experience, but why not? Oh, it's an opportunity, and I can. And one thing I must say to anyone, if an opportunity comes your way, grab it with both hands because that may not come back to you again if you think, oh, I'll wait, get some experience. No, just take it because you can learn on the, or you can find ways to learn. And once I got that opportunity, I took it. I had to go through a good 16 months worth of training to be broadcast ready. However, I wanted to make sure that when I was first going live on the air, that I knew what I was talking about. I knew how to. I sounded like a broadcaster, and there's a difference between podcasting and broadcasting. There's a vast difference, and I just wanted to make sure I got it right. So I did my work before I went in, but in that meantime, I built my own brand. Shebs the Wanderer, I created that. I suppose it came from the fact that I was wandering around the world. So it kind of, because people would ask me, where have you gone now? And I'd say, oh, he's gone wandering. So that's how the brand first started. But I knew when I first started, I knew what I was talking about as well. And I was just telling you before, I gave that student that advice, that travel, she was a travel, what do you call it, journalist student. And I said, if you don't travel, then you're not going to know what to write about or what to talk about, or you really need to go out there. So anyone who comes to me, anyone young, first advice I'd give them is go out there and travel, because if you want to be in this field, that is the main. And as I was saying to you before, going on a press trip is very different to when you're traveling on your own. If you can go out there and find things and source things for yourself and find a way to travel yourself, that's going to do you the world of good when it comes to starting your brand or starting a job or a career, because you automatically get respect, I think, because they say, actually, yeah, he's been there, he's done that, or she's been there and she's done that. I respect that. And you can then stem your experience and then start your brand. But before you start a brand, you really need to map out, you need to have a vision board. And I'm sure you know as well, Sahara, it's very important to have a vision board and where you want to go. You have to have a business plan, because if you don't, well, you have to have something that you have a goal to reach, because if you don't, you will be in a sort of like a limbo stage where you don't know where you're going. And I I go with this with a passion that you do need to have a vision board. You need to know where you're going, because otherwise you'll be stuck. And if you can then plan ahead and find out, right, this is where I want to be in 2 years' time. And obviously you don't know what's going to happen in life, by the way. You can get offered a job as a broadcaster, or you could offered a job somewhere, and it could be, and you just have to take that. When the magazine first came to me, I had no idea that I had no experience in running a magazine. I had no experience being an editor, but that came along and it was a surprise. And I said, right, I'll take it. It took me 4 months to say yes, by the way, but you're going to get those along the way. But you have to be ready, because someone will see the talent in you, and you have to believe in yourself. Because if you don't believe in yourself, then you're not gonna. Who else is going to believe in you? So plan business plan or a vision board to where you want to be or what goal you have is very, very important, especially if you want to be in this industry, because it is quite a well, especially what I do anyway, it's very, very cutthroat. And you really have to have, there's some tough moments where you sometimes think I can't do this, but you really have to get there. And another thing, just before we go ask you, I know I've divulged quite a bit, but I have had the right mentors as well. There's been people in my ear telling me the right things, and having the right person in your life or in your who's giving you sage advice is also very, very important to your career, I think. And if I didn't have those right voices in my ears, I probably wouldn't be sitting where I am right now, because it was vital to my development, I would say, of course. So hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, there was a lot of really great information in there and advice. I especially resonate with what you were talking about regarding just saying yes when opportunities come your way. I know there's always going to be voices in the back of your mind saying, I've never done that before. I don't have that experience. I can't do that. But why not say, why not me? Right. And just go for it. I'm a big fan of figuring it out along the way. It's the same thing for traveling. You had to start somewhere as a solo traveler, right? So, especially as a female, it could be scary. There's limiting beliefs, but we get on that plane, we book that ticket, get on the plane, and then you just figure it out. And that's how you grow. And the more opportunities that you take under your wing, the more you build a brand for yourself, a recognition, visibility for yourself, and you never know what other opportunities come your way. I talk about in my travel coach network and my certification program a lot the importance of visibility. So if no one hasn't heard about you, read about you, seen you before, how can they work with you? How can they talk about you? How can they offer you any opportunities if they don't know that you exist, right? So working through those limiting beliefs is really important. And then when you talked about lastly that mentorship, I'm a huge fan of mentors. I've worked with countless mentors throughout my life, and I still have mentors to this day. It's really important to find those who, and it doesn't even have to be within the same industry. It doesn't have to be within travel. It could be whatever it is. I like to find a pain point that I have, and I find someone who's done something similar, or if I've come across someone and I just resonate with their success or achievements in some way, reach out and say, hey, would you mind sharing a couple words with me? Or how did you do that? Do you mind telling me? Or can you point me in the right direction of, how I can learn what you've done, whatever it might be. Same thing with overcoming those fears and just asking. The worst you can get is a no or crickets, and find another mentor out there. But mentorship is really, really important there. And then Shebs, I know in a previous conversation we were talking about the importance of networking and building relationships also helps you build your brand and helps you seek all these opportunities that you've given. Can you share some advice for those? And I get this often is, Tara, how do I build my network? How do I do that? What would you say?
It's one of the most important things you could do, building your brand with any, doesn't have to be the travel industry, it could be any business. Networking is vital to any business goal, really. And I would say one of the big things I did was when I first started podcasting and just reaching out to individuals to interview. And that's technically collaborating with someone. You're networking in some respects. So I was collaborating with someone, and because I was collaborating with certain individuals and they had I suppose, a bigger platform, or they were well known within the sector, that got people noticing me. And that was maybe a bit of a easy way of getting in. So people start going, oh, who's this person? And then I remember, I think within the first couple of months of starting my podcast, I got someone reached out for me to mediate an event, and I had again no experience whatsoever doing so. And it was a big event in the States. Actually, it was based in New York, and obviously I said yes, by the way. And but I was interviewing people on that platform, and they've had 10, 15 years worth of experience, broadcasters, they were writers, journalists, and that was partly because I'd interviewed someone and they saw that interview, and they were well known within the sector, and they said, well, we actually really like the way you conducted that interview. So it is vital actually to your cause, no matter what you're doing. As I said, it doesn't have to be travel, it could be anything. If you don't network or if you don't collaborate with someone, people aren't going to see you. As you're saying, their visibility is important. And the other thing about networking is you may need to go to quite a lot of industry events where people can see you. And you just, again, talking about visibility. If the people don't see you, they're not going to know you. And when I first started off, by the way, again, go back, not many people knew who I was, but now I'm inundated with invites to events and people asking me to go on trips, etc. Again, it wasn't coming my way initially when I first started, but I've built it over time. And it's one thing you have to, the advice I give you is it could be a bit of a slow burner. You have to ride it out. If you don't have the stomach for it, then you need to find another. I'm very straightforward with anyone who asks me any, because not necessarily to scare them, by the way, it's just to sort of be realistic. You really have to be in it for the long run. If you really want this as a career, then you're going to have to find moments where it's going to be nothing's coming your way, but eventually things will. And if you look at the magazine that I'm running, if you look at the podcast, the co-executive producers all came about because consistency. It was all consistency. People, if you can see it, people within the industry will see that you're very consistent. They don't want anyone who's a flash in the pan, comes in out the door within couple of years. You want to see a consistent person. So if someone reaches out to you, they've seen your work and there's a consistency of 5 years, then you can be trusted. And also you got to do things with integrity as well. Make sure whatever you're doing at the highest of integrity, because if you get found out for taking shortcuts, as I said, if you're not, you got to be in it for the long run. In business, people or experts will see through it straight away. I mean, I can probably tell straight away if someone is being genuine or not. We go back to that authenticity state as well. So you really have to be authentic in what you do. And then if people can see that, then you have a chance of succeeding. There's no guarantees in life, by the way. Got to make sure I give you that advice. There's no guarantees, but you really have to work for it. Nothing comes to you on a plate.
Yeah, it's like in any business, right? It's consistency. You're not going to see people automatically these days want instant results. We're very like kind of used to it with the social media and what it did to our short attention span and the especially now with TikTok, how easy, quote unquote, it can be to go viral. People are always want something so instant, but in
Hmm.
business, it doesn't work that way. You have to be
No.
in it, like you said, it's
But
slow, it's long.
I just want to interject. So you might get that success with the TikTok. You might
Oh,
go
absolutely, you
viral.
can,
You
but
can
it
do.
doesn't apply everywhere.
Yes, exactly. But you could go viral. But then the next step is what do you do with that? So I've come
Absolutely.
across individuals who have gone viral. They've maybe done well for a year or two, but then they're lost. They've gone. They're out the door. They're
Oh, very
not seen or
common.
heard. So this is what I'm trying to say to you. If you do the hard yards, if you
Hmm.
build your brand from if you have the foundations, you've got to lay the seeds, I say. So if you can lay those seeds and then the plant will grow. It takes time for a tree to go big, doesn't it? It's not going to be an overnight thing. And you got to, as I said, you got to be in it for the long run and really work hard, listen to people, and going back to the networking, collaborating with individuals, and people will give you respect automatically and say, well, actually, this guy or this girl knows what they're doing. They are very reputable then, and brands then will reach out to you. You don't even have to reach out to these brands. PRs will reach out to you. I mean, my podcast, for example, I've not reached out to any guests for about a couple of years because PRs just reach out to me all the time, and that's when I first started. I had to reach out to individuals. So it shows you that if you do it correctly, if you have going back to the vision board, you really need to plan out what you want to do. Why are you doing this? You go back to you asked me why I travel. Why are you doing this? That's you got to keep answering that question. Why? What is your why? What is your why? What is your purpose? You got to have to keep answering that question because your purpose could change as well as time goes on. Your purpose can easily change. So you just got to keep answering that question, and then you will be on the right track, I think.
Absolutely. Well, Shebs, you've given us so much great information here. Before we go to my favorite question at the end here, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners?
Well, as I said, I run a travel magazine, which is Voyagers Voice, and it's been running well, I took over, it's been running for about 3 years, but I took over the realms end of 2022. So it's been about a year and a half now, and it's doing great. And we are in independent stores, but we are looking to grow that. And hopefully, if people are listening out there, if you want to get involved, get in touch with me. I would love to be, well, I would love for it to grow further. I want to get it into the States as well. I know one of my goals is to get it in Barnes and Noble in the States. So that's a big goal of mine. So hopefully, and compare, I mean, we were nominated for awards, by the way. So we were nominated alongside National Geographic recently, Condé Nast. So that's a big step. However, my goal is to make that brand as big as possible. So you could have, just to answer the questions in terms of your branding, you could have a brand within another brand and another brand. You could what's the word? So you have your initial Shebs the Wanderer, but then from that Shebs, the tree grows. You've got branches. You're going to have different branches along the way, and you have to be ready for that because your brand will just keep growing, and you could have other brands. And a business owner, or I'm sure you know what it's like. You're going to have other ventures along the way, and that's really, really important, I think, within any field.
Absolutely. Well, my favorite question, is there a fun fact about yourself that you can share with our listeners? It does not have to be business or travel related.
Yes, I do, and yes, it's nothing to do with business or travel. But I am a avid tennis fan, but I actually played at quite a high level. So I've played. I wouldn't necessarily. I don't want to go down the pro route, but I've played with a few of the pros, and I still to this day practice or get people ready for tournaments. So if you know the tennis world, there's obviously the big Grand Slams, which is like Wimbledon and US Open, etc. Then you have the lower tiers. I've played into I used to be ranked once upon a time, but I don't play tournaments anymore. But I play I get people ready for tournaments now, and I only did it a couple of weeks ago actually, where one of the pros said, "Can you get me ready for a tournament? You know, just hit with me, etc." And I did, and that's at a lower level. The ITF is like so it goes like ITF and then the other tournaments and stuff. So that's something not many people know about. I'm a big tennis fan, but also not a bad player. So if anyone wants to challenge me to a game or a match or anything, I'm very happy because I was on my travels to Greece recently, and there was someone who used to also be an well, not necessarily a pro, but was there or thereabouts and stuff, and they challenged me to a match. I said, "Go on, let's have a game." So yeah, tennis is a big part of my. I do love this, but I also like to obviously stay fit for that. So heading to the gym, etc., is important. I think it also keeps me in line, and if you can stay physically fit, or if you then everything it's like the mind as well. So if you're physically fit, your mind's fit, everything else goes well. So that's an interesting fact. I've got more, but I'd go with that.
Perfect. Were you happy that Alcaraz won Wimbledon?
Yes, I'm a big fan of his. I am Federer was. I've seen the big guys, a lot of the big. I actually haven't quite seen Alcaraz play yet live, but Alcaraz does remind me of. He's in between like the Federer Nadal sort of realm. He's got everything going, and yeah, he's a big star, and I can see him dominating the game. Actually, that's a big plus for the sport. I was actually saying that though. I actually think the women's game is actually better at the moment, and I was talking about this a couple of weeks ago. The men's game was very strong. With there was quite a lot of the big fours in you and the big three. But I actually think the women's game is a lot more exciting to watch. It's a lot more faster, a lot more. The quality is amazing. You don't know who's going to win. So if anyone wants to watch the tennis, I'd suggest the women's game. It's actually right up there as some of the best games I've seen, or best matches I've seen anyway. Especially the women's final. Actually, I thought that was much better than the men's this year.
Yeah, yeah. I watch quite a bit of tennis because my husband likes to watch tennis. So
Oh, good, good, good.
I
Oh,
know.
both tennis fans.
Yes. Perfect. Well, Shebs, how could everyone find, follow, learn more about you?
You can find me everywhere on Shebs the Wanderer. You can Google that, or actually, if you Google my name, Shebs Alom, I'll come up everything about me on there. And also, you can subscribe to our magazine as well, which is Voyagers Voice. If you go to voyagersvoice.com, you can read all of our stuff worldwide. You don't have to necessarily be in the UK. We do sell the printed version of it currently only in the UK, but my goal, as I said, that's the next plan, is to get it worldwide, and the US is a market that I'm looking at. But you can subscribe to the digital format at the moment. I could potentially send you a copy, but depending on the postage and packaging, you may not want it. But those are the platforms. So Shebs the Wanderer and voyagersvoice.com, you can go to and find us there as well.
Wonderful. Well, we will be sure to put all of those links in the show notes for everyone who is listening. Shebs, thank you so much for being a guest on the TCN podcast today.
Sarah, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And hopefully I'll get to meet you in person one day.
Absolutely. Well, everyone, be sure to follow us on Instagram at the Travel Coach Network. Learn more at thetravelcoachnetwork.com. Come give us a hello in our TCN Global community on Facebook. You can find the link for that and your free beginner's guide to travel coaching, along with all of Sheb's links in the show notes. If you know anyone who may be interested in travel coaching, please be sure to send them our way to our podcast. We truly appreciate it. And until next time, my fellow wanderers, bye for now.